Hello, I'm Joyce Robinson, Assistant Director of the Palmer Museum of Art, and I'd like to welcome you to Field Language, the painting and poetry of Warren and Jane Rohrer.
Don't think the story moves before us like a single file of horses passing along a horizon line in the eye. Don't think there is a story at all. Rather, a great congress of scenes on a stage revolving once in 24 hours. It's theater in the round, and we are the audience, which is, of course, on stage also. In a rare instant when we are not performing, we see through the curtain the act that just passed in its slow merry-go-round motion to the sound of calliope and recognize ourselves as we are everywhere at once.
How do I describe Warren? Very handsome, very soft-spoken.
The relationship to the land, I would say, is one of the most important aspects of my growing up. I mean, the land really did have a meaning beyond just a place to make a livelihood.
I think the thing that impresses me about them is how both of them were so entirely devoted to constructing the career of a modern artist. Both of them. Martha Jane Turner was born in 1928 in Broadway, Virginia, which is in the Shenandoah Valley. They married in 1948, and at that time, after 2 years, Jane dropped out of college. She got a job in the dean's office, and Warren continued with his education. 1961, they moved to the farm at Christiana, and she had an enormous garden there.
The words dappled with sunlight floated across the open field as I drove by. You understand the dapples did not float, or the sunlight, just the words, since by that time I had passed and would never see that green instant again. Yet it is cut in permanence and perfect in my most real of archives, a small gallery of moving frames from another place while I am here.
And here's where I feel he's unique in American art. He makes you profoundly aware that nature is still there, that the field of the surface of the painting is a landscape.
He had a truth that showed with his work all the time, just continuously. And it was his love, and it was his obsession. And it also was the truth from his heritage. Everything just came, showed in the work.
And that idea of kind of going back and forth between this very sort of local context and an idea of the bigger, broader world is something that I think he was always interested in, and again, something that people can relate to.
But Jane was always there in very strong presence, but never on the front line. It's always in the background.
In the early 70s, when the boys left home, Jane was able to audit classes at Temple University, at the University of the Arts, and there she met Stephen Berg, who became a great fan of her work, who supported her, who published her poems for decades in the American Poetry Review. She was also part of a very serious poetry writing group in Lancaster City.
Jane's poems reflect an aesthetic shared with her husband Warren that stemmed from their Mennonite roots in the land and an ethic of straightforward simplicity. Through a focus on object and image, she reveals the true subject of her writing, relationship, the meditative moments when a solitary self senses the electric connections it shares with another.
That is all. I rake leaves, it is fall. They are falling, you see, that's all. Not dying or hearing a call. Just falling, that's all. The trip, the blue distance between the branch and the pile was too sweet a chance to glide and tack back and forth in magical style, like men in hang gliders over La Jolla, ecstatic and quiet up there. But for the clicking of harness and wings in folds of air as they came down over us with that satisfied look. I've been away, out of my skin, out of my mind. So, stay if you want, crucified in place, nailed to the limb with your unlined face. Me, I'm out of here. Don't write, don't call. I'm bored with it all, but the fall. That's all.
That repetitive gesture that Jane sees, she sees it in the leaf that's falling in her own yard, and that gesture reminds her of seeing the hang gliders at La Jolla going back and forth and back and forth. That's the connection between the idea of the very local world and the things that you do in your own little ecosystem and the patterns of the larger world, where there's a kind of, the connection is that it's almost like a stitching motion or a sewing motion or a planting motion or a painting motion, back, forth. And then that's in the poem and the way the words work, fall, all, call.
During her marriage, Rohrer's voice was informed by the mutual project of Warren's painting career. Paradoxically, she only came into the fullness of her own personal artistic achievement after her loss of that communion. An inaccessible Eden haunts and invigorates her work as she strives to voice alone the paradise she once found in concert with another.
More and more we appreciate her knowledge and her depth of support for Warren's work.
Fields in snow. You have obviously been here since my last visit, and I like what you've done. But is it landscape or is it art? It's all so confusing with you coming from the other side. Calligraphy, there on the contours of the field, scribbling in stalks and stacks left from the fall, is visible in the distant upper levels of the canvas, if it is a canvas. But it's the wash of thin white, just a sift of snow. Or is it white that erases the visual samsara and beckons me to you beyond the pale? We've been split like a schist. Here I am, and there you are, parallel.
Is there anything else you'd like to say?
We miss him.
We were learning about the whole art world,
Yeah.
the visual and the literary. We had a different toolbox, that's all.